start this off with just a special word of thanks for this is an exciting time of year for the whole organization. One, we've had our players in here for several weeks, in the off-season program, and really preparing. We now know our schedule when who we open up with. We're very excited about the 2014 season, and as you interact with our coaches and our players throughout the building, they're really excited about this 2014 season and what we're building here. So that's exciting. Also, obviously, what this press conference is for is the 2014 draft upcoming. The draft is about the future. We're excited, and it's a cumulative work of a lot of people, whether it be from our coaching staff, our scouting staff, our IT department, our football administration department, our medical staff. It's really the whole building have done a lot of work in preparation for Thursday night and continuing through the weekend and even after once the draft is over as college free agency begins. So it's a lot of work. I know we're very excited. We're prepared. We're confident about this weekend coming up here, and we're ready to go. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Dennis, how would you assess the depth, particularly in the first, say, 5, 6, 7 of offensive tackle in this draft?
I think with this draft, there's a lot of talent throughout at a lot of different positions. Like every other draft, certain areas of the draft, whether it be higher in the rounds or lower as you get through it, will have different hot spots of talent, and this draft is no different.
But with offensive tackle specifically, how do you see that shaking out?
I'm not going to comment on specific positions. Obviously, there's some really good players at the offensive line position. There's some really good players at all the other positions: defensive line, linebacker, defensive backs, receivers, all those things. And we're prepared. We evaluated a lot of players and gone through, and we're ready for that.
Dennis, when you were in Tampa, you did some trading in the top rounds of the draft a couple of times. How seriously have you considered making trades in the top, say, first 2 rounds with this team?
We definitely explore all avenues that we feel like we can help. You're obviously in contact with other GMs, just seeing where they stand and what their ideas and thoughts are going into the draft. Obviously, once the draft gets started, it starts afresh. But yeah, we're exploring all avenues, trading up, trading down throughout the draft, and we'll be prepared for that.
Dennis, if you're looking at the draft board, it's time to draft, and need and best player available are not the same player. What is your general philosophy in that regard?
Well, this whole process, and we're a process-driven scouting department. It starts way back in last May, and obviously I'm jumping in kind of in the middle of the cycle and implementing a lot of different things. But with that, it's all about evaluating each player independently. Not only evaluating the player's talent, but also the player's makeup, adding into the medical evaluation. And with that, we come up with a Dolphins value, and that's how we rank according to that Dolphins value, and that's how we'll pick players.
So what's a Dolphins player? What do you want out of whatever player you draft, aside from being able to play football, I guess?
Obviously, we want talented players that help us win on the field, but we want good teammates. Guys that will contribute to our community and all the things that we stand for: tough, smart, disciplined, and really it can be summed up by being a good teammate. That's how kind of we look at it.
Dennis, I have a 2-part question related to offensive linemen. Number one, I'm sure there are a lot of qualities you look for when you're judging an offensive lineman, but what do you consider the maybe 2 or 3 most important?
I mean, there's so many things, and for each position, we have generally we have 5 major factors that go across positions, and then generally we have 10 specific factors. So there's a lot of things that go into what makes a player good, and different guys compensate with different areas of their skill set to make them good. So I mean, to just narrow down, obviously we want tough, we want smart, we want productive players, but that would be it.
No, the second part of my question is, when you look at I know you've only been here a short time, but when you look at the history of the Dolphins and their record of drafting offensive linemen very, very high each year, they've had some pretty decent success. A lot of Pro Bowl guys in that group. Is it easier or harder or the same to project offensive linemen coming out of college as opposed to other positions?
And I think I think more so it goes back to the individual players. I mean, you got those players were talented. They were good, good players on and off the field, and so I think it goes back to the individual players there and judging them and evaluating. That's our focus, is evaluating each player on his own merit and ranking him accordingly.
Dennis, when you came into this job, how much time did you spend looking at what this organization has done in previous recent drafts?
Primarily, I focused on the players who are on this team, primarily, and then just really focusing on the evaluations of the players that can potentially be on this team will be via the 2014 draft.
So how would you describe your assessment of how this team has done in recent drafts?
I'm focused on the 2014 draft. Obviously, we always, and in Tampa we were the same way, you always want to be reflective, learn from whatever mistakes, and try to judge and improve your processes as part of that, and that's what we've done, and those are the processes that I brought to the Dolphins here.
Dennis, how was in Tampa? How was the draft room run? Was there one voice, or was there, even when you guys are actually draft day and you're on the clock, is it one singular voice, or is there a combination of voices during that 10-minute allotment? And do you plan on having a similar setup here?
Yes, it was. Most of the decisions, and I've talked about this several times before, is I'm a big believer in proactive decision making and making decisions leading up into the draft. The draft day should be calm. The only variable is the trade element. That's what we try to make decisions and work through players leading up to it, and that's part of the process that's been going on for the last 3 or 4 months here since I've been on the job, is just working through that. So that's a part that we want to make decisions based on players there.
And you expect a small group in the actual draft room the day of the draft?
Yes.
And looking back in Tampa, at mistakes that were made, or good decisions that were made for that matter, can you give us an example or two, a couple things that maybe changed your thinking and the way you would go forward in future drafts?
You always look at your process, and as you reflect back, whether the picks were great, whether the guys end up being Pro Bowl players or maybe they weren't what you expected, you always go back to the process and was there a breakdown in a certain part of the process, and then you make adjustments accordingly that way.
In terms of this draft, do you feel it's better to have more picks or higher picks in terms of the getting earlier picks or having a larger quantity of picks from a talent standpoint?
It's a little bit hard to say, but I always like more picks. I always want to have more picks. So.
Philosophically, Dennis, how do you weigh value versus need? I mean, obviously, if you have a need at say, hypothetically 19, but the players that you got there don't have a number 19 overall value for you, do you still pick that player, or do you, if you can't trade out, or how do you balance that?
Those are decisions that we made leading up to it, again, with the proactive decision making. And basically, we have levels of players. And that's how, when I talk about the Dolphin value, that's where we're placing them, considering there's a lot of variables. That's obvious the player evaluation, but there's always the character makeup and, again, the medical evaluation, which is they're all very important parts. So you bring that all together, and at the end of the day, this is where we would take this player, and that's the Dolphin value.
You talked before briefly about the analytics department. Can you explain what you see as your vision for analytics and how much have you actually employed it so far?
Yeah, we've always kind of used it on a smaller level, just but we're looking to expand that. And again, analytics to me is a tool to aid in the decision making. There's a lot of data out there that we have access to that we're just looking at different ways to extrapolate that out and maybe help us in decision. Whether it's separating two closely ranked players or anything, it's a tool. Still, the most important part is going back to the tape, what these players have done on the field versus the 11 on 11, with the scoreboard running. That's the important part for me, and going back to the tape.
In baseball, it's pretty easy to use analytics because it's truly a numbers-based game. Football's different, though. I mean, you use how many times a guy gets open on a skinny post versus is that how you use it? I mean, I'm curious as to how you use numbers.
There's a lot of different numbers, whether it be measurables or different aspects of getting quantitative data that we're able to use. And again, those are the things that we're exploring as we look forward to putting that department together.
Give me one example of how you use data to evaluate a player.
I never said that I use that to evaluate player. I use that as a tool to help in the evaluation process. So I evaluate the player by watching this player, watching him live, watching him on tape, those type of things. Now there's different tools to say, with the analytics using measurables and different aspects, whether it be, there's a lot of different aspects. I mean, a lot of the things you can probably see on the internet with different websites, but we want to put our own spin on it. I have my own vision of it, and again, some of those details, it's kind of competitive advantage for me.
Dennis, what are your general guidelines for players picked in the first round and then players picked in the second and third? For instance, should a first round pick start, say, 8 games and be a major contributor? Second and third round players contribute from scrimmage, special teams mainstays. Are there general guidelines that you believe from first?
First, every player is different, and it's important as we evaluate these players, talking with coaches, talking with our scouts, is outlining what our plan and our vision for these players are. But it's important. We want them to contribute. But again, each person is unique. Each player is unique, and we just want them to help contribute to us to make a better team, and that's both in the short term and the long term.
You've got a couple of positions, maybe more than a couple, I don't know, where you need a starter. Is it fair to expect starters to come out of this draft at those positions?
We want to get good players. Now, and the starting element, that plays itself out. We want to build competitive environments, bring guys in, but again, that plays itself out. Again, we just want to get good players in here that fit the criteria that we're looking for.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on the draft moving back 2 weeks? Has that been a good thing for your staff? Has it been a bad thing for your staff? What has that element done to you?
It's changed it a little bit, altered it. Obviously, it is what it is, so you just adjust your schedule accordingly. We've had a little bit, pace a little bit at certain times. It's been an opportunity to. There's a lot more opportunities for like injured players that maybe in the past, if it was 2 weeks or a week ago, they wouldn't have been able to work out. In that they're healthy enough to work out. So that's probably the biggest change with that. With the advent of more pro days and visit structure, those type of things.